Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Teal Teardown Hockey Podcast. After a 2-week hiatus, we are back and it is episode 15. We have a lot to catch up on here, including a couple of trades that happened, a waiver wire pickup, and obviously how the Sharks have done over the past 2.5 weeks. So with further ado, let's just get into it. Well, the Sharks are dead last in the league for the second year in a row going into a big break. Last year was the All-Star game. In this case, it's the Four Nations tournament. Things at least look less bleak than last year as we have a stud in Celebrini. Will Smith is up. He's showing signs of improvement. You can see that there is a youth movement, but in terms of the whole team's overall performance, it's just not up to par in terms of what an NHL level team should be. Right now, they're dead last, like I said, 37 points in the season. They are 4 points behind the second last Chicago Blackhawks, but they actually have 2 more games played. So it's pretty safe to say the Sharks are going to be a basement team. At best, they'll finish bottom 3, but I'm telling you, they're probably going to be dead last again. Positive side about that, they'll get another potential good pick. There are a lot of blue chip number 1 potential overall picks that are going to be good, so we'll probably talk about that later in a few months as we lead towards the draft and maybe the draft lottery. But as of right now, the Sharks the performance is obviously subpar. They're not really playing an NHL team, but you can't really blame them because they're not really icing an NHL team. You could probably count in one or two hands how many NHL quality players there are right now. So you can't really fault the Sharks. This is the process that we're expecting here. They're supposed to be rebuilding. They're supposed to be collecting as many potential futures as possible, and they are doing that. Greer has been doing a great job. We're going to obviously break down the trades that have happened over the past couple of weeks and what Greer is looking to do probably towards the trade deadline. We're probably going to talk more about that next week, but I do want to just brush upon that a little bit. But I do want to just go over where the Sharks are right now. So over the last 10 games, they are 1-8-1. Their only win came against the Pittsburgh Penguins over the last 10 games on January 27th, where they won 2-1, which is, underwhelming just because the Sharks couldn't outscore them, score more goals basically. Nothing special there. It's really sad to see that the Sharks couldn't really perform better in that situation. They are scoring some goals against other teams, but we're not seeing blowout games where they're being blown out on the other hand of that. So yeah, the Sharks are just awful right now. You can see there's some positives there. Mostly it's Macklin Celebrini. Will Smith has improved. I talked about this early in the season, how as long as day one Will Smith is way worse than what we're seeing at the end of the season Will Smith, it's a good thing, and I can definitely attest to that. That's the truth. Right now, Will Smith is way better than he was in the beginning of the season. He's more confident. He's shooting a lot more, and honestly, we're seeing a lot more of his shot than his playmaking ability, and that's kind of what we've been sold from him, is that he's more of a playmaker, and you do see a lot of those sweet plays. Don't get me wrong. There's a couple of sweet passes he made just this week on from assists he got. So that's still there, but that shot is really underrated in that sense. I think he could actually be a low-rated, a high goal scorer. He could be more of a pure goal scorer than a playmaker, or at least maybe more well-rounded than we think. But we'll have to see how the future pans out. But overall, obviously, there's a lot of positives with him. Eklund, he's taking that next step. This year he has shown that he is an elite. He's potential to be elite, but he's a solid NHLer who has a lot of great instincts. He's got guts. That's what I like about him. You would think the whole typical Swedish guys are soft, all crap, and he was young, and when he first started coming in the league, he was very easy to push around. He stands up for himself a lot more. He's more gutsy. He's not afraid to get in front of other guys, get in front of the net to make really cool plays, and he really is turning the back of the net, of the opponent's net, his office. Just like Gretzky, he likes to get back there and make some slick backhand passes. There's obviously a lot of potential here. Zetterlund, another guy who's becoming a premier power forward. Again, when I'm talking about this, it's in terms of the comparison of what the Sharks were, not compared to the rest of the league. But you're seeing that goal with Zetterlund against Dallas, where he was just inside the net. He had to kind of jam that puck in. He had a second chance at it. No one could push him out of the way, and he scored that goal just by jamming it in there. That's the kind of stuff you love to see. He's also not afraid to just go as far into the net as he can, like race to the net with the puck and take a shot. Like he's a gutsy power forward. So there's a lot of positives in terms of the youth. Obviously, because of the recent trades, there's obviously a lot of holes that the Greer would have to call up some guys that aren't really NHL caliber guys just to fill up those holes. But unfortunately, that's just the way it goes when you're a rebuilding team. So we just have to enjoy what we can because Celebrini is doing some crazy magic. Toffoli's another guy that at least makes it fun to watch the Sharks. He's just that consistent, the constant guy that always plays very well. He's always competitive. He's scores some really nice goals. He makes some really smart plays. He's the type of guy that you'd love to have on your team. Those are the positives. Now, the negatives obviously are the, Podorowski. I hate to say it. I call him the Patrick Kane of the AHL, but that's unfortunately where he kind of belongs, is the AHL. He's a little too slow for the NHL. He's obviously a smart player. You can see that the plays he makes, they're intelligent plays, but his legs just aren't there. Either he's not really using them that much, or he just can't catch up with NHL caliber players. So that is definitely a fault on him towards the NHL. But Greer is just doing good by him because, or probably Warsofsky's playing him more because of the fact that they have history together. Brandy had mentioned in the podcast or in the game against Dallas yesterday that Warsofsky won 2 championships in the AHL with Podorowski, the Charlotte Checkers and the Chicago Wolves. And when Podorowski won the AHL playoff MVP, Podorowski was the go-to guy for Warsofsky. So they obviously have a relationship. I think Warsofsky's just doing good by Podorowski, giving him a chance in the AHL. So in the NHL, sorry. So that's what he's kind of doing. But as a second line center, he just doesn't cut it. You'd rather see Wenberg there. So when Wenberg comes back from injury, I'm sure he's the one who's going to fill that second line center spot. Podorowski will probably be sent down during this break. And he's going to play with the Barracuda again. He's leading the team in points there. He's probably going to be able to dominate there and help them hopefully get his 3rd championship in the playoffs. So right now, we'll talk about the Barracuda later, but that's probably what's going to happen with him. But in terms of the Sharks, let's go back to how the Sharks have been performing the last little bit. The last 10 games, the Sharks have only scored 27 goals, which is about 2.7 goals per game, which is not ideal for the way you want to win games. And they've allowed 51 goals against. As of right now, they're the only team in the NHL that has let in more than 200 goals in the season. They have 216 goals against throughout the whole season, and the second most is Chicago Blackhawks with 191. So they are obviously just really awful at letting goals in. They were good at scoring goals earlier this season, but that's really decreased. They're not the worst in terms of goals for, but they're about 3rd last right now. 3rd or 4th last. The Anaheim Ducks are having worse trouble scoring. They have 137 goals for. The Sharks have 148 goals for. So they're just behind the Blackhawks, who have 149 goals for. The Preds, surprisingly, the Nashville Predators, have 144 goals for, so they're actually second worst. Surprisingly, they have trouble scoring with all the guys they signed in the offseason, but the Sharks are still hovering around there, and the goals against are really where they need to improve these kinds of things. Just looking at the team stats here, Granlund still is leading the team in points, but that will soon change. Macklin Celebrini has 40 points in 45 games. Granlund left the team with 45 points in 52 games. So Celebrini's just 5 points behind. Give him a week or two and he'll already be number 1 in scoring. Eklund, surprisingly, has the same amount of points as Celebrini. He has 40 points in 52 games. So he'll be hovering around there with Celebrini. But Celebrini's points per game obviously is a lot better in the way he plays. He's obviously going to end up probably being the scoring leader. Tyler Toffoli now is 4th place with 36 points in 54 games. He's finally got his 20th goal of the season that he got yesterday with Dallas. He's just been, like I said, the constant, the one vet that you can rely on. He gives the confidence to the other Sharks young players just to say, this is how we play, guys. Just play like this, and we can win. And, unfortunately, the team doesn't really rally behind that. I think it's just more of a talent thing. You can see the Sharks have effort, right? Like, they are trying to win games. It's just that the talent difference is just, it's obvious. Like, they played teams like Dallas, and they played like Vancouver, Vancouver has had their issues, but they're still a playoff team. They're capable of making the playoffs regardless. So the Sharks just aren't in that level in terms of talent, but that's okay. So Tyler Toffoli, 4th place in points. Zetterlund, 5th place with 33 points in 57 games. He has 15 goals. That would make him tied for 3rd for goals for the team. We'd be tied to actually 3rd place with Granlund, who obviously left. So in terms of these forwards, top 4 forwards now with Granlund gone, this is still a solid core of guys you want to look forward to. Like next year, they're going to be that much better. Celebrini, Eklund, Toffoli, and Zetterlund. But right now, it's not quite there that you want them to be doing something more other than Toffoli because he's kind of older. Jake Wallman has 29 points in 44 games. He's really stumbled lately. I don't know if it's because he came back from injury and he's just kind of healing from that. But he's not the same guy defensively or offensively. He's just not doing the things he was doing in the beginning of the season. I'm going to attest it to the injury. This break that we're going into right now, this 2-week Four Nations Cup break, is going to be so beneficial for everybody. I think just to get away from the game, get their heads out of it, because it's got to be demoralizing, right? You're going into a game, every game you're coming into, and you kind of know in the back of your mind, you know, you want to be a confident guy. You think you're gonna win. You're an athlete, a pro athlete. You have all this confidence, but in the back of your mind, you know, we're probably gonna get smoked tonight. Like we're outclassed and everything. So they kind of know that it must be exhausting to come in and work hard and know that you're outclassed every game, and you know, it's not good to do that in front of your fans. These guys are proud guys, so it's just a little bit demoralizing. So yeah, hopefully this break kind of refreshes everybody. They get to take their minds off the game for a little bit and just have fun. And on top of that, I do see, regardless of the fact this team is losing, there is a lot of like chemistry between these guys. There's a lot of like playful bonding, if you want to call it that. They're type of guys that really they get along very well. Like Ceci, when he left, he was interviewed yesterday during the Dallas game when Dallas visited San Jose, and he's actually going on vacation with the Toffolis and the Cunnins. So like he talked about how like he misses the guys, he likes hanging out with the guys. So there is locker room chemistry there, so that's a positive thing, because the vibes are super important. If you were paying attention to just the news, what was going on in Vancouver with JT Miller and Elias Pettersson, there was that toxicity in the locker room. It really hurts the performance on the ice, and no one wants to come into the rink knowing that there's going to be that kind of negativity. So the fact is that the Sharks, unfortunately, the negativity is coming from the ice. The fact that the guys are still really close and they can have that kind of like chemistry and positivity towards each other is a very good thing to have. So that is one positive about this team that we can kind of say that can be a good thing for sure. But yeah, so right now the Sharks aren't looking good. The points are stagnant, if you will. Another thing I want to point out, because we're still talking about the stats here, is Will Smith has 23 points in 49 games. I kind of already touched upon the fact that he's a lot better of a player than he was before. I mean, a lot of his 23 points came later in the season, as he had a hard time getting a point or a goal in the first month of the season. It didn't help that Celebrini was gone, so he was like, all the spotlight was on him, and he's not that level of Celebrini who can just do everything already as a young kid. I really am confident that Will Smith, in like 3 years max, he's going to be a very elite, I want to say playmaker, but an all-around guy, because that guy, his shot is unbelievable. Like you can see so many flashes of his skill, like his just emerging as the season goes by. You love to see that. So yeah, just wanted to give a shout out to Smith and how his improvement he's just improved. It's gotten so much better. And I'm just looking forward to next season when you have that official, they call the NHL offseason, after a rookie has an NHL season. That first offseason is such an eye-opening time where they actually change their workouts. They know what it takes to play. And if the really good athletes know that they have to change their routine and the things they have to do, and they really put that much more into it, that their second season usually is just more of an improvement. There's just more, experience. Their body's better for it and stuff like that. Obviously, you have those sophomore slumps too, but obviously, I think that Will Smith is going to have a better second season than his first one, because there was a lot of that confidence he had to work towards. So yeah, that is pretty much the state of the Sharks right now. And let's just go on with some of the news that happened over the last couple of weeks since we were gone. Starting with the Walker Duehr claim off waivers. So the Calgary Flames put Duehr on waivers. He's a 27-year-old guy who shoots right. He's already played for the Sharks for 7 games. He actually has 2 goals already for the Sharks, which is nice to see. Nothing crazy, nothing like he wasn't like expected to be like the next superstar for the Sharks. He fits pretty well with that fourth line with Grundstrom and whoever usually is in the middle. It's been Dellandrea sometimes. Sometimes they threw Cunnin down there. Obviously, when Sturm comes back, that would be a pretty solid fourth line right there. He does the right things. He's not doing anything like spectacular, like I said, but he is, like doing all the stuff that you expect him to do. He's finishing checks. He's on the forecheck. He puts a lot of pressure on the offensive defense, the defenseman that they're going against, and so he's not He's not been great or terrible. So yeah, in 7 games, 2 goals. He's a -4 for a team that's this bad. It's not that terrible. I know he's not playing a lot of minutes, but yeah, that was a decent claim for the Sharks with what Greer's planning to do with offsetting some forwards. He obviously needed to get some NHL caliber kind of guys that could at least fill the spot without bringing the young guys up and forcing them into this like awful team situation, like especially with the Barracuda, who have been stripped of some good players throughout the season, and they've honestly it's hurt their momentum. But we'll talk about that a little bit later when we talk about the Barracuda. But yeah, so he's just the type of guy, he fills that spot. Will he stay with the Sharks next year? Maybe, maybe not. But just as a plug, he's not too terrible. So another acquisition the Sharks made, they traded Justin Bailey for Pavel Regenda. So far, that pretty much looks like an AHL trade. Bailey didn't really play much for the Sharks. He played earlier in the season, but then he pretty much played for the Barracuda the rest of the time. But he was the tank commander. He's one of their tank guys. So last year, he helped the Sharks tank a little bit. So you got to give him credit for that. He went through a lot of the hell the Sharks had to go through to get Celebrini, so I respect him there. Hopefully, the Anaheim Ducks give him a chance in the show so he can actually show what he can do. Fast guy, he's a little bit gritty, but again, nothing special, so that's why he was playing for the Barracuda this year. As for Pavel Regenda, he's 25-year-old. He shoots left, also undrafted like Connor Dewar is, but he went straight to the Barracuda. He got traded for Bailey, and he just started playing for the Barracuda. He's played 7 games. He has 4 points. He has 1 goal, 3 assists. He's already has 10 penalty minutes, so he's a little bit of a tough guy. And yeah, he's a +1. So the fact that he's doing okay, you can't complain. Like, it's a pretty decent trade, I would say. Nothing crazy or special. But the biggest trade that obviously happened over the last couple of weeks was the Granlund and Ceci trade. The Dallas Stars acquired Mikael Granlund and Cody Ceci, and the Sharks got a 2025 first-round pick, which is sweet. That is something that you really, really love to get. And then a 2025 third-round pick that's conditional. If the Dallas Stars don't make it to the Stanley Cup final, it will become a 4th-round pick that I believe came from the Winnipeg Jets that was given to Dallas, and now it'll be the Sharks. And it's likely, if there's a rare miracle that somehow the Dallas Stars make it, they're a good team, but they have to go through either the Vegas Golden Knights, who are loading up for the playoffs, or the Winnipeg Jets, who have been pretty good, or the Colorado Avalanche. So they can do it. They're a very good team, but it's not like a guarantee that they're going to be in the finals. Hockey is unpredictable, and the Dallas Stars are a good team, but they have their work cut against them. So the sweetener of this trade is that first-round pick. I know it'll be a late first-round pick, so that's kind of the funny thing too. So if you want that third to be a third, you're going to have to hope that first-round pick is either a 32nd or a 31st overall pick, or you hope that the Dallas Stars are out in the first round and you get that like middle first round pick, and then that third round pick has just become a 4th, but at least you got that higher first round pick. So, it's really a double-edged sword kind of a thing. But I would prefer, honestly, if the Dallas Stars were out early and the Sharks get a higher first round pick, because this draft isn't deep, but to have a chance at a decent player is always a better thing to have. But yeah, that first round pick still for Mikael Granlund is huge. So considering Mikael Granlund was acquired for Erik Karlsson as a cap dump 2 seasons ago, what the Sharks did with him, making him a first-line center, he got all the potential minutes to show what he could do, and then could trade, and Greer was able to trade him off to get a first. It's a win in my book. That's a crazy good thing to have. Dallas has a great guy, not only like a player, but a great guy in the room. He's a hard worker. He does everything he needs to do, and he has skill. He's gritty. He's a perfect center to have. Last night he played on the wing, I believe, on the second line. He obviously has that ability to transition wherever you need him. So big win for Dallas, and I think the Sharks, who are rebuilding and still collecting as many prospects as they can, this is great too, a first-round pick. So I'm happy about this trade. Cody Ceci, I mean, he was kind of like, I guess you could say that he was what's given that third-round conditional pick. I know there's a lot of loss about him. It's a mixed feelings about him, because he was the Sharks' first pairing pairing defenseman, and he's had his holes. That's the best way to say it. Like, I know the broadcast last night, the Dallas game, was really pumping up his tires and saying how great of a defensive defenseman he is, but he pinched a lot. I wouldn't call him a pure defensive defenseman, because he pinched a lot. He had some nice shots on net when he pinched, but like, defensively, he's just been kind of awful. Like, for example, that Dallas game yesterday, I had shades and like kind of memories of the things he did where he had lazy stick work, and Eklund scored that first goal in the beginning of the game where we're celebrating that sweet backhand pass, and Eklund had an easy shot on net. Ceci was covering Eklund. He had his stick on Eklund, but it was such a lazy stick check, and it was like, I've seen that a million times when he was a Shark. So Ceci, like, I don't know if we want him back. I would prefer some other defenseman with size, but if he can accept the fact he's maybe a 6-7 defenseman next season, if Greer can actually load up and maybe some guys take the next step, I can accept that, but I do not want Ceci as a first pairing defenseman for the Sharks. If that happens again, we're probably looking at another tank year because he's just not that guy. He's okay. He's probably a great veteran. He probably works very hard. I remember when he was a Toronto Maple Leaf, the one thing that they said about him was that he's like an athlete's athlete. So he was the best at everything not hockey related. So when they played golf or they did other things, that they said that he was like the best at it. He's just a natural athlete and good at things. Unfortunately, like, he's an NHLer, don't get me wrong, but he's not a great defenseman. He's okay at best. He has a lot of faults, and I mean, there's a lot of times where in the defensive, he'd be on the point on the offensive zone and he'll like fumble the puck and cause a 2-on-1. I don't think he'd be great, to be honest. He says he'd love to come back because we were talking about the vibes in the room and he loves the room. I just don't see him as like a guy you want, again, as that first pairing defenseman. If the Sharks improve and he's the third guy, sure. And if he takes a really low amount of money, I'd be okay with it. But yeah, so Granlund, Ceci, I hope they can do well in Dallas. Again, mixed feelings though. I'd love to see him do well, but at the same time, I want that high pick for the first round pick. But whatever you can do. So yeah, that would be the trades that happened over the past couple of weeks. And with those trades, the Sharks had holes, right? So what Greer had to do was call some guys up from the Barracuda to kind of fill that spot. Number one was that second line center role, with Wenberg being out with injury and Celebrini being very young. Like, you're really, really vulnerable when it comes to one of the most important positions on a hockey team. So Warsofsky bringing up Podorowski was not a bad thing. He was leading the Barracuda in points. He still is, even though he's been gone for a few games. So, there's that history, too, with Podorowski winning 2 championships with Warsofsky in the AHL. So it was nice to see him, play these games. And they said that it was the first time that he's played 3 straight NHL games. But he's not an NHL guy. I hate to admit it. Like I said before, he is the Patrick Kane of the AHL. He's got a lot of championships. He's got a lot of points and stuff like that, and awards. And he's done so many great things in the AHL. But when it comes to NHL, he's just that step behind. Like, you see it where the goals yesterday in Dallas, he couldn't skate backwards fast enough. And the one for Montreal where he was on the point, it was almost like a Ceci play. He couldn't control the puck. He was too slow in that 2-on-1, and they scored against the Sharks. Like, he's definitely one step behind an NHL type of player. So, unfortunately, I hate to say it, I love Podorowski in terms of the AHL, incredible player, but as a second-line center, definitely not really that good. His advanced stats are the second worst in the league in terms of expected goals. He's a .191. Second worst of all forwards in all situations. The only one who's worse was Sabrin, who was a 0, and that guy is expected to be a fourth-line player at best. So, I mean, there's nothing more to say. I love Podorowski, but he's just not that guy. He's only going to help the tank that much more. I know he's just a placeholder for when Wenberg comes back, but it's been bad. So the only good news for him is that he's probably going to be sent down to the Barracuda this week with the 2-week break for the Four Nations tournament. He'll be better off served there, and the Barracuda will be better served there because, again, the positive about him is he's a great AHL player. He does everything right. He's got the smarts. His speed is more attuned to AHL because it's a little bit slower. It's just that he's just not an NHL caliber player. I hate to say it. He's older now too. He's not like a young potential prospect. He's just not that guy. So Podorowski is just, he was a placeholder. It was nice to see him, but sorry, buddy, go back down there and try and get your third championship for the CUDA. That would be nice to see. Help these young kids that are going to be stepping up. Help them get that winning culture, that winning feeling before they become Sharks. So that's what I love to see there. So with that being said, let's tear down the games of the week. All right, so on Tuesday, the Montreal Canadiens visited the San Jose Sharks, the first game of the week for the Sharks. And out of all the teams that the Sharks would play this week, this is the team that the Sharks most likely could have beaten. The Canadiens were still better in terms of points. They have 55 points versus the Sharks having their 37 points. But of all the teams, like I said, they most likely were to beat them. And it was a fairly close game. Like the Sharks weren't terrible, minus the few goals that they let in were the biggest horrendous mistakes. They were able to keep up with the Canadiens throughout the 60 minutes. It's just those goals, like I said, were what cost them. Which is obviously, that's hockey though. That's you let more goals in. That's how you lose, right? But overall, like the Sharks, there were some positives there. Like Colin Graff got his first NHL goal, a beautiful snipe. Like he just skates down, he doesn't even look at Montembeault. He's looking to the side and absolutely rockets it top corner. It was a beautiful, beautiful goal. Hopefully things to come for the future for the kid. And maybe now that he's got that monkey off his back, he's going to be able to kind of roll some more, especially after this break, maybe taking a few weeks away from the game. He'll probably be able to maybe come back as maybe more hot. Who knows? And the Toffoli goal, I want to give credit again to Macklin Celebrini, the freaking just an incredible player. He was in the neutral zone and Toffoli's driving into get into the Montreal Canadiens zone. Just a perfect saucer pass to Toffoli. There's a Montreal stick between Celebrini and Toffoli, and Toffoli's pretty far away from Celebrini, and it's just the exact spot you need to take it to. Like Toffoli just skated up on his own, and he scored. It was just an absolute beauty all around. So the goals for the Sharks were very nice. The Canadiens, you couldn't really fault them as much as it was for how good the Sharks played. But in terms of the goals against, like for the Caulfield one on the power play, that was just something that they lost their guy. He's very sneaky. Caulfield was right in front of our goaltender, was Vanacek, and he stood right in front of him, and then he kind of snuck higher into the slot. Like he skated up a little bit towards the blue line. He's more in the middle, and no one saw him. And a goal scorer like that's going to score every time. He just had the time to get the puck, and all he needs is that split second to get his shot off, and he would end up scoring that power play goal. The one that Newhook scored, that was the one that I believe there was the one that Podorowski coughed up that I was talking about before, where Podorowski was on the blue line and the puck goes up to him and he just coughs it up and it's a 2-on-1. Liljegren, who by the way is having a rough week. If anyone needs this break, it's Liljegren. He's stuck trying to decide who he's going to take on the 2-on-1. Podorowski kind of sees that Liljegren's taking the one guy, so Podorowski's too slow to go to the right and take the other guy. And obviously the 2-on-1 happens and Newhook scores the goal. A lot of these goals were just kind of just mental flubs. But overall, the game was okay. Like, the Sharks were able to hold up. It just minus those situations. The Shark outshot the Canadiens. They had better chances. Like, not that they were all, like, grade A chances, but they were capable of holding on. The power play was 50-50 both sides. They were both 2 for 4 on the power play, both the Habs and the Sharks. The Sharks didn't get as many hits. The Canadiens had 29 hits to the Sharks 17. Obviously, it attests to how the Sharks had a little bit more possession. They just couldn't do anything with it. But overall, this game, like I said, the Sharks did not play as well as the Canadiens overall. Just those little mistakes that cost them those goals. But there was those bright spots. Like Graff now, I think you're going to see him light it up a lot more versus what he's been doing the last few games. And Toffoli, the constant's going to be Toffoli and Celebrini doing Celebrini things that are amazing, that you know he's just going to be the future of this team. You're so excited to see it. So overall, there's a lot of positives, but the fact that this was like a measuring stick game for a team that the Sharks I want to say were capable of beating, but they were capable of beating them, but like out of the other teams, they were more, there was just a better, they were closer in terms of the skill. And obviously the Montreal Canadiens had the win. But the positive side, again, too, is that the Sharks will have the rematch in Montreal on February 27th, which is not too far away. So this game will still be close to their memory, and they'll probably want to make up for all these mistakes. So hopefully the Sharks can actually, embarrass the Montreal Canadiens in their home rink. So we'll have to see what happens there. All right, game number 2 of the week. The Vancouver Canucks are visiting the San Jose Sharks, and they have been going through their own kind of drama and turmoil, but it looks like since the JT Miller trade, things have been going pretty well for the Canucks. They've won 3 in a row. They are at 63 points in 55 games. So going into this, I know this is just earlier in the week, so they're about maybe had a 1-game win streak, I believe it was. So the Vancouver Canucks coming in, obviously there's a lot of levity. There's, the weight's off their shoulders of all this drama that happened, and they're facing a bottom feeding team like the Sharks. You're kind of expecting the Sharks are going to get just completely devoured, and the good news is they weren't like completely destroyed compared to some other games that we've seen over the last couple of weeks and last night. They end up losing 2-1, and the Sharks were pretty good at like holding on against the Canucks. It was a 0-0 game for the first two periods, like pretty much the first 50 minutes. Dakota Joshua didn't score the first goal of the game until 8 minutes and 4 seconds into the third period. So it was a fairly even matchup, a lot of back and forth. Even the Sharks outshot the Canucks 34-24. They had way better in faceoffs. They're 57.1 to 42.9. It's just that the skill ended up being the Sharks. Like Dakota Joshua is a big boy. No one really could stop him from getting in front of the net. He was in front of Vanacek. Vanacek obviously started this game too. I think what Greer's trying to do is, obviously Vanacek's been gone for so long, to get him back into NHL form, because he wants to at least trade Georgiev or Vanacek by the trade deadline to get something back, and I think he's just trying to showcase Vanacek. And he did a fairly good game, but this one, it just wasn't that great. Toffoli would get his 20th goal of the season, which is very nice to see. He's just the constant. It's nice to see him get another 20-goal year. Sick feed from Eklund. Eklund's just been an amazing playmaker these last couple of weeks. And that's the only goal the Sharks would end up scoring. The story of the game, though, is that Celebrini was really kicking himself because this managed to go to overtime. And Celebrini was chasing O'Connor, who had a kind of a clean break. It was more of a 2-on-1, and Celebrini was just behind O'Connor. And he kind of had a clean break, and Celebrini grabs the jersey of O'Connor just at the end. It was enough that it did interfere a little bit with O'Connor doing any kind of move. So it was called a penalty shot, and O'Connor would score on the penalty shot, and the game would be over right there. Celebrini's kicking himself for it, but you're considering how good Celebrini's been all season, this is the kind of thing you can forgive him for. He's still a rookie. He's still figuring things out. Something like this, out of all the brilliance we've seen from him, I'm going to give him a pass, because that stuff's going to happen as a rookie. And like I said, considering the good stuff we're seeing, small stuff like this, you have to forgive that kind of stuff. So in the end, that's really what cost the Sharks. Dakota Josh was a big boy, and getting in front of the net, no one really able to push him around. This is something I want to talk about next week. The Sharks are going to need some size here. And even the Dallas game we're going to talk about too. That really is what stood out to me, is that the Sharks can't really bully teams that are bullying them. They can't fight back as much. They don't have those kinds of horses that can match that way. And I'm not saying the Sharks need to get a guy that's like a super skilled big guy. Just even if he's a pylon, if he's a big guy that can at least push back, I'd be happy to see that, just to kind of give the other Sharks players some room to do some more stuff. That's what I'm just kind of seeing here. And Dakota Josh was a big boy. He's very skilled, and he ended up scoring that power play goal that got the game going. But the Sharks here, the positive side is, they were managed to hold Vancouver scoreless until halfway through the third period. And the Sharks would end up not having that many giveaways. They tied in giveaways 14-14. They had more blocked shots than Vancouver, so that was a lot of that going on there. But Vancouver is now 3-0 against the San Jose Sharks, which is expected with the bottom feeder. Like the Sharks and Vancouver being a playoff-seeking team, they're supposed to be doing better. So right now, the San Jose Sharks have a chance to redeem themselves on April 14th in the last game against Vancouver to at least maybe get a win and make this some kind of a redeemable series. But so far, the Canucks have had the Sharks number. This one, though, was the closest one. And fortunately, an overtime, it could have been 50-50. It was a decent overtime. Just that one mistake that Celebrini made cost the team. And that's what we're seeing a lot of, at least this last few games, is that the Sharks play well. It's just those goals against do cost them. The one thing, that one mistake that hurts them is that goal against. And when a team like this is expected, like when you're on a team that's with the Sharks a few years from now, hopefully, are looking to make make the playoffs and contend, these kinds of things, these little razor's edge situations that cost you are going to hurt. But right now, it's lessons. As long as they learn now, and 4 years from now when they're contending, hopefully, for a cup, this kinds of things will be kind of behind them. But I can't fault Celebrini. Like I said, he was kicking himself because he's so competitive, and you could see it on the ice. Like he was really, his demeanor was completely down when the game was over, and you can't blame him. Like he's just a competitive guy, but like as someone who's watching him, you can just forgive him. He's an 18-year-old kid, and look what he's doing. So that's all I have to say about that. Cut Celebrini some slack overall. This game was fairly good for the Sharks. It's just that They're just ended up being on the wrong side of it. So yeah, that's pretty much the Vancouver game right there. And this now takes us to the final game of the week. The Dallas Stars visiting the San Jose Sharks, and this was a blowout. I mean, the Dallas Stars are a high-end team. Nothing is kind of what we expected, right? The Sharks are a bottom team. Dallas is second place in the Central Division. I mean, if it wasn't for the fact that Winnipeg has just become a wagon this season, and Dallas is 9 points behind Winnipeg for first place in the Central Division, Dallas would be competing for it. Just that Winnipeg is unstoppable. Like, Winnipeg has an 8-game winning streak right now. Like, what can you do? They've had these kinds of winning streaks all season long, so you can't really say that Dallas is garbage. Just that's all I'm saying. They're a very, very good team as well. They have 72 points in 55 games, and they're just, obviously you can see they outmatched the Sharks. Obviously, the big news of this game was Ceci and Granlund's return to San Jose. Kind of an emotional thing, and obviously we had some news with Ceci saying he'd like to re-sign with San Jose from the reporters asking questions, and Granlund actually had a couple of points, which is nice to see. Just in times it hurts for the Sharks, but I mean, at the same time, you love to see a guy like Granlund, who's been so good for the Sharks, at least be successful and kind of just say, hey, remember me, because the Sharks, we know they're going to be bad this year. We accept that, and to see that, Granlund has his confidence going on, sure, whatever, I'll accept that. But the game started off very well. Like, it looked like the Sharks might have shooken some cobwebs off for the beginning of the week and could have potentially upset the Stars if they were able to stay defensively solid. So in the first minute 25, Eklund scored the first goal of the game from a beautiful play from Celebrini. So the play started off. It looked like it was going to be a nothing play. Like, Dallas cleared the puck out of their zone. Somehow Toffoli gets it, and with the speed of Celebrini, Toffoli just dumps the puck back in. Celebrini catches it. Makes a quick look from the corner of the boards on the right and sees Eklund come up. And he just does this one quick backhand pass perfectly to Eklund's stick, who's right in front of the goaltender. I think it was Casey DeSmith, and he scores it. So the one thing I did want to notice about that is Ceci was the defensive guy who was on Eklund, and he had a lazy stick check, and that gave me just shades of what we saw of him throughout the season for the Sharks. He's done some great plays, but those kinds of plays you saw a lot as a Shark, where he either has a lazy stick or he's just one step behind the forward or the guy who scores against the Sharks. And we saw it just instantly in the first play of the Dallas game. So that was kind of fitting to see in a way, because he just a lazy stick check. Eklund had an easy goal to score, and yeah, it would be 1-0 Sharks, and the momentum would keep rolling. So Zetterlund would get the second goal for the Sharks and the second goal of the game. It was kind of a weird play. Podorowski kind of passes it to Smith. Smith passes it to Zetterlund, and kind of a weird play, kind of bounces off the side of the net. But Zetterlund stays with it, and there's an opening where he kind of misses the side of the net, and Zetterlund picks up the puck and just tucks it in. Just as a power forward kind of move, even though he wasn't really obstructed by a defenseman. It's the kind of thing you love to see a power forward do. He's right in front of the net, right next to the goalie, and he just uses that ability to grab the puck and just tuck it in the net. Perfect goal. And just an overall great play from Smith, and Zetterlund's great power forward type of goal. But yeah, that would make it 2-0, and the Sharks start the game buzzing. There's a lot of optimism, but the Sharks typically, as they have been doing most of the season, give up a goal immediately after scoring that one. Matt Duchene would make it 2-1. Nothing you can really blame there. Duchene's just a really skilled guy, and he seems to have the Sharks' number a lot, especially when he played for Nashville. He would get his 21st of the season. Then Jason Robertson would end up making it 2-2 10 minutes into that first period. It was just a score fest this first period, basically. We'd see 5 goals. But the one that really I wanted to talk about was the Mason Marchment goal, which made me realize the Sharks really need size. Mason Marchment was behind the Sharks' net, and he was battling, he wasn't really battling. Liljegren was trying to go up to Jason Robertson to get the puck from him. Or, not Jason Robertson, Mason Marchment, to get the puck from Marchment. Marchment does this crazy reverse hit. It just looks like it was a big butt bump. He just gets up, bumps Liljegren. Liljegren falls to the ground because he's just, the size difference is apparent. And then he kind of just backs up a little bit and then tucks the puck into the net. It was a much harder tuck than it was for the Zetterlund goal. And Vanacek, another thing too is Vanacek should have been hugging the post a little bit better. But yeah, Marchment would just bump Liljegren, take it up and score. And yeah, just both a bad play. Liljegren, like I said, has had a bad week. He needs this break more than anybody. And yeah, Vanacek there should have had that one. So that was an ugly one for Vanacek, in my opinion, who has been playing okay this week. It's just that these kinds of things you saw, and the rest of the goals too. There's a lot of goals that Vanacek would let in that you're like, that Duchesne one in the second period, for example, it made a 4-2 to Dallas. The short side goal, like, he should have had that. He wasn't covering the net completely. There was a little bit of space, and it was perfect enough for Duchesne. Credit to Duchesne because that little space, but at the same time, Vanacek left a lot of holes up there and around the side. So if Duchesne had more options, it was just a really perfect goal from him. But Vanacek was not in the right position. The angle was bad and everything. So yeah, that would make it 4-2. And 8 minutes later, Maverick Bourque would end up scoring a goal from Jamie Benn. A pretty nice goal from Bourque, so nothing crazy there. And then we would continue on to the third period. So Dallas would make it 6-2 with Wyatt Johnson's goal. Then Thomas Harley would make it 7-2. Walker Duehr would finally give the Sharks another chance to maybe make something of it, but obviously wouldn't. They'd make it 7-3. And then Jamie Benn would get the last goal, just that old man type of a goal. He had a breakaway and just scored against Vanacek. And again, Vanacek, a better goalie may have stopped that one. And Jamie Benn's a little bit older now. He's not the same kind of scorer he was, but unfortunately that would make it 8-3, and the Sharks would lose this one. They're outskilled. The Sharks overall played okay. It's just some of the goals that they let in were on Vanacek, on bad defense. But overall, the Sharks did hold on fairly well. They were just lost to a better team. What can you do, right? The Dallas Stars outshot the Sharks 34-27. They had better faceoff percentage at 55-45. The Sharks were 0-for-2 on the power play, while Dallas at least scored 1 on the power play. Not that they needed it because they completely destroyed the Sharks. But that's pretty much how it works. And because they had more possession than the Sharks out-hit the Stars 27-10. But yeah, overall, the Dallas Stars are just a better team. And the mixed feelings. I want to see them do well because I love Granlund and even Ceci. I have a soft spot for him, even though I don't think he's like a great player for the Sharks. When he played for them, I think that, he's a good guy. He's a great guy. So I want to see them do well. But at the same time, I really want that high first-round pick. So, that's the hard thing about being a Sharks fan. You like the old players you played for your team, but at the same time, you really want the Sharks to do well. So, I'm pretty happy for Granlund, happy for Ceci that they have a shot at a cup this year. And the Stars now finish the season 3-0 against the Sharks. Luckily, the Sharks won't have to see them next year until they hopefully improve after the offseason. And the Stars will, have their shot at their cup this season. So that rounds out all the games of the week. And going into this, now we have a 2-week break. I believe the Sharks will have 9 days off after today before they go back into practicing again. And then they'll be going in a little bit of a road trip. So it'll probably be 2 weeks from now that we're going to do our scheduled win-loss. We're going to skip that this week, obviously, because there's nothing to talk about. And so that's pretty much it for the games of the week. So the final segment of today, because there is no scheduled win-loss, like I said, is going to be looking into just a quick look into the Barracuda and how the mighty have fallen. They are now 5th place in their division. They're just behind the Ontario Reign, who have 55 points. The Barracuda are 29, 24, and 14 with 53 points. Like I said, they're behind the Ontario Reign, who have 55 points. The Coachella Valley Firebirds are ahead with 3 points ahead of the Barracuda. The Colorado Eagles are second place with 56 points, and the Calgary Wranglers are the ones who have been on fire this whole season with 61 points. So the Barracuda have fallen. I don't want to completely blame them because just like the Sharks, they've been calling up guys from the ECHL to fill their holes, with those guys going to the NHL because the Sharks have had some holes themselves from injury and now the trades. So Paul Doralski was obviously called up. Colin Graff, who was 3rd place in points for the Sharks. So Paul Doralski is 1st place in points for the Barracuda. Graff is 3rd place in points for the Barracuda. And these guys have been playing for the Sharks for at least a couple of weeks now. So that obviously is going to hurt the Barracuda, right? When this season started, when the Barracuda was actually on fire, Askarov played most of the time. All these guys were playing, and even Podorowski was actually not even getting the points he was getting till recently. Like, Podorowski's been on a hot streak for the AHL. So just looking at this team, like, everyone was playing except for Gushchin, who started a little bit later. So they had all their stars, they had all their studs, and Askarov was and he still is on fire, and he's playing very, very well in the AHL. So it's not a surprise that chemistry issues are going to happen. Skill issues because you're calling up guys from the ECHL. it's not a surprise they've fallen down. As long as they're capable of staying in a playoff race, once the trade deadline is over, once the Shark season is over, all the players who are capable of playing the AHL are going to be playing for the Barracuda. So that's where we're really going to see what they're made of. Hopefully, the Barracuda will be able to compete with some of these other teams. I really, really, really think a Barracuda Wranglers series would be one for the ages, just because the Barracuda are stacked. So far, you can't really compare because of the call-ups and stuff like that and the points they have. But I think they will be able to hold up against the Wranglers. I thought it might be a first-round matchup or a second-round matchup, but it looks like they may play each other in the first round because they're so far down, and the Wranglers are staying in first place. So that would be probably the best series to watch in the AHL, and I will be following up on them and talking about them and watching this series very, very thoroughly. But yeah, so right now, the Barracuda, you can't blame them too much. They've just been so streaky lately. Just going back to this 22nd of January, they played 7 games, and out of the time, they've won 4 and they've lost 3. Luckily, 2 of them were in overtime, so they still managed to get points there. They lost to the Marlies in overtime, and they've also lost to the Henderson Silver Knights in overtime. But they've beaten the Tuscan Roadrunners, they've beaten the Henderson Silver Knights as well, and the Coachella Valley Firebirds. They seem to have their numbers this year. So surprisingly, the fact that Coachella is ahead of San Jose is kind of nuts because San Jose has beaten them every single time. I would think if they play each other in the playoffs, the Barracuda will be able to put them away very easily, very nicely. But yeah, what we're seeing is just a streaky team, which you can't blame because, again, Podorowski, their highest scorer, has been in the NHL for a while. Graf has also been in the AHL for a while. And Askarov just returned to the AHL now that Vanecek's back. So we're going to see, I think, a little bit of a turnaround here. And once the season ends, I don't know how the trade deadline is going to work. If I'm Greer, even if you're trading some guys, you're going to want to acquire just some guys to fill some holes at NHL level just to get these AHL guys down, because I think at this point of the season, you want to make sure that chemistry is there. So when the playoffs happen, they're capable. They're able to actually, there's comfort with each other to be able to play. And that's kind of what you want to see. So, and again, I don't want to say it. I want size. I want Greer to get big guys for the Sharks to help them out. And that way, they don't have to be skilled, just guys who don't get pushed around. So the other guys in the Sharks can make some plays and do things. So Liljegren might be paired with a big guy who might be, very slow, but at least Liljegren will be able to make more plays and do things because that big guy is pushing the big guys away. So going back to the Barracuda, that being said, once everybody's back and they have some chemistry, I really do hope that they do have a good run. But right now, I just think the streakiness will happen. I am a little bit concerned they might fall off with the playoffs, which is like the hope this whole season was that at least the Barracuda were going to get a chance at a championship and give all these young players like that confidence. But yeah, we'll have to see. So the Barracuda right now are kind of fumbling. They're streaky and fumbling. We'll have to see how this goes. And the next week we're going to talk more about them because obviously this week there's no Sharks hockey to talk about, just the Four Nations tournament, which we'll talk about a little bit as well. But that's pretty much the Barracuda for the week, and that's going to be it for the show as well. All right, I want to thank you again for listening to episode 15 of the Teal Teardown Hockey Podcast. As you're listening right now, you can check us out wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm also on Instagram at Teal Teardown Hockey and on X at Teal Teardown HKY. If you like the show, leave a like or a comment. It helps with the algorithm. And that's it for me. I will see you next week.